Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our panel. I promise you that difficult questions will be discussed. The most difficult topic in Europe today, which may show the sharpest turnaround in European history. Rearmament and its dilemmas. I'm here together with an exceptional panel. Rosen Plevneliev, President of Bulgaria, 12 to 17, 2012-2017. Tonino Picula from Croatia, who is a member of the EU Parliament, the Foreign Policy Committee of the Parliament, former Foreign Minister of Croatia, His Excellency Nathaniel Kopsi, Ambassador of the United Kingdom to Bulgaria, Sylvie Mateli, Director of the Jacques Delors Institute, one of the most influential institutes in Europe, Petr Chulakov, who is a representative of the Bulgarian Defense Industry and its Association, and he is a member of the Board of Directors of Optics AD. And Svilen Rangelov, CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Dronamics. Dronamics is a company producing drones, one of the big successes in the Bulgarian industry lately. To start with, each of our panel members will be asked to answer the question that I asked at the beginning. What is changing right now? Because we can imagine that history is like a flow passing by, and we can't grasp it. All the whirlpools there. We need time, but we've got good experts who can photograph history at the moment. So, Mr. Plevneliev, let's start with you. Thanks a lot. And to answer your question, we are beginning to understand what's happening to us in terms of security, defense, not only for our societies, but institutions, democracy, welfare. I'd like to thank the organizers because this is a wonderful conference and we need wisdom from all the participants, not just propaganda. That's why I'm honored to be here and to be political at the beginning. It's easy for me to speak to you because I've always said what I'm going to tell you today. No, the war didn't start in 2022. A bloodshed in the heart of Europe, destroying everything that we believed in, institutions, rule of law, peace. It didn't start then, when Putin, like a Hitler of the 21st century, decided to take away the right of existence for Ukraine, the way Hitler did during World War II with the Jews. So the war started months before that, when Ukrainian brains were being brainwashed, that Zelensky was sort of a Bandera, that the rulers of Ukraine were Nazis. It started years ago when the Russians had put in the bots in all the stages, all the areas of the internet. 14,000 times the word Zelensky is a Nazi was encountered. And when you probably mention 2014, when Russia occupied Crimea, no, it's earlier than that, because if you listen to the speeches of Putin, what happened in Georgia and might happen in Moldova, you've got a Russian minority, you activate the propaganda machine, you tell the world that their rights have been infringed upon, and sooner or later you reach a war. Georgia, Ukraine, other countries lose parts of their territories because of the imperial ambitions of Russia. So in 2015, when we had a referendum and we were hit by a cyber attack, the Bulgarian politicians went to a committee for national security. I was chairing it. They did not react. They did not tell the Bulgarian people that Fancy Bear part of Russian intelligence organized the cyber attack. So going even further back, but no matter. Boyko, as to your question, are we awake? Probably. Do we understand what's happening? Probably. Are we ready? That's the big question. And here we are going to go into details, but I'd like to provoke you with two other scenarios. Imagine that Russia finds it very important to integrate Kaliningrad, because Putin can launch rockets from Kaliningrad to Berlin, even simple ones. What would that mean? What do the Baltics think about this, especially Latvia? And why the Germans, for the first time, sent a brigade to the Russian border? So, where are we? Second question, Moldova has a pro-European president, a wonderful woman. She wants democracy, she wants rights, she wants the rule of law, fighting corruption. The Russians, of course, hate those things. And what's going on? Russian agents are there, Russian soldiers are there, the Russian minority has been weaponized. So what's going to happen? Probably what happened to Georgia and Ukraine. And probably Putin will go to the Danube River, just telling you where we are. So the debate is open. How do we in Bulgaria can do something to preserve our democracy, human rights and freedoms, and to work towards a strong European Union with strong nation states, because this will happen with our assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As a president, you were known for your optimism. Now I'm turning to Mr. Tonino Pizzula. Same question. What is changing?
Everything. I think it's very important, of course, to be today in Sofia, trying to at least seek for possible solutions. Why everything seems to be so different if we compare situation, let's say, 25 years ago. In that period of time, I was privileged to serve my country as a minister of Foreign Affairs. And we then started our journey to become a member of the European Union. Of course, Bulgaria in that period of time was ahead of us. And I still remember one nice gentleman, Italian professor, Romano Prodi. Then he was president of European Commission, remarkable personality. And he came to Zagreb on government session, providing us famous questionnaire we need to fulfill in order to, of course, start our negotiation process. And together with the Prime Minister, then Ivica Račan, he appeared before the press people and said what I remember still vividly today. He said, you Croats and rest of the Europe, we are living in a very, very peculiar moment because we are European Union, and I do hope that Croatia will be first Balkan country to join the family. And the European Union is surrounded, it's the center of the ring of friends. I'm talking, it was 2003. Now, here in Sofia, 2025, we can easily say that European Union is surrounded with a ring of fire. So we need to find, first of all, proper answer, what's happened in the meantime, and if it's possible to do something common and quickly. So I think that the profounding promise given to the European citizens decades ago to live in peace, prosperity and cooperation, now it's even more important than ever. Because I think we are now center of, globally speaking, three major mega trends. First of all, unfortunately, this is a period of waning multilateralism. In Romano Prodi's time, it was effective multilateralism, which helped to resolve different conflicts in different corners of the world. Today, unfortunately, we can see there is much more conflicts and less cooperation. On the other hand, we see a number of events and processes which are accelerating. So we got no time to reflect, to think, to analyze from now to go on. We now need to find possible and feasible solution. I want to say not right now, but we got very short time to adjust ourselves on this situation. And third megatrends we need to take into account is fragmentation of the world political scene. As we all know, that all types of alliances are under the pressure. All friends now are new rivals in a way. And the European Union is especially sensitive on that type of the changes. Why? My favorite answer on that is that we are a unique political form, sui generis multilateral entity. Because when you talk about Russia, when you talk about Brazil, South Africa, when you talk about China, and some other major players on contemporary political scene, we are talking about common states. And European Union is specific. We are a community of the states. It's not easy, 27 countries, to align in the same direction. And now the time is, we need to find a way how to align ourselves in the same directions. And we would like to conclude this part of our discussion, reminding everybody that 2012, European Union, for the good reason, was awarded with the Nobel Peace Prize. Then critics says not because of economy, but Peace Prize was given to the European Union. Now, even peace project started 70 years ago, must find a way how to be ready, prepared to defend itself. It was not our wish. We would like to reap this peace dividend forever, but unfortunately, as it's now a situation, the ring of fire we are centered in are forcing us to find a different and more decisive answer to save our way of life. And I remember one former NATO Secretary General, Manfred Werner, once said that security is an oxygen for democracy. So we need to find a way how to uplift our security, keeping in mind that we need, first of all, to preserve our democracy. Otherwise, we saw what happened on the other bank of Atlantic when most of the people decided to sacrifice some liberties, civic liberties, in order to enhance their feeling of being secure. I don't think it's always a good way to explore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pizzula. It was very, very interesting. Yes, indeed. It was a time when people like Romano Prodi, heads of state, were intellectuals, peaceful intellectuals. Now we are into the ring of fire and Game of Thrones. So, Your Excellency, Mr. Kopsi.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon. As we're sitting here this afternoon, the skies of the Middle East are full of rockets and drones, and Israel and Iran are locked in an existential conflict, a conflict for the survival of the state of Israel, a conflict for the survival of the Iranian regime, and they're doing it with weapons. We also live in a world where wars of imperial conquest have returned and where the great powers will invade the territory of their neighbours and annex that territory in full violation of international law. So we live in a world in which the rules have changed, and the rules have changed completely. I hope not forever, but they have changed very substantially. And to answer the challenge of that new world, my government, the British government, recently published its Strategic Defence Review. It's the first step for us in our rearmament process. It's the first fully costed defence review in Europe. It is a defence review which will make our armed forces 10 times more lethal, which will allow them to make full use of the power of digital as well as conventional warfighters, the power of drones, artificial intelligence, and autonomy, alongside the traditional, what we call heavy metal weapons, which we see a lot of in Ukraine as well. It's a hugely ambitious document setting out the plans for our defence expenditure in partnership with our friends and partners in Europe and also with our friends in the United States and around the rest of the world. We will construct 12 more nuclear-powered but conventionally armed submarines, in addition to our 2 aircraft carriers, the rest of the fleet, and our nuclear-armed submarines. We will invest in a sovereign rocket building capacity, build thousands of rockets over the course of the next few years, and we will increase our defence expenditure by a very substantial level, coming on top of the fact that the UK has spent more on defence than any other NATO ally, apart from the United States, in each of the previous 20 years. But this will not be enough. A lot more will need to come, and this is just the first step as we prepare for what is going to be an exceptionally more dangerous world. And I was struck by the planning assumption of the 2 NATO generals, 2 British NATO generals who visited me last autumn, and that is to be prepared for the possibility of an armed conflict with the Russian Federation within 2 years. That's very soon. So our world has changed fundamentally, and that's also why it's so important that the United Kingdom works with our friends and allies in the European Union, which is what we're seeking to do. If we fight together, we should build together. NATO allies within Europe should no longer be developing their own exquisite and very expensive capabilities at very small production volumes. We need to do more at volume, and we need to do it now. So that's a big part of our focus of our work together between the United Kingdom and the European Union, and the partnership between the UK and the EU and other partners outside of Europe, like the United States, is going to be at the absolute heart of our security in the future, just as it has always been in the past. Essentially, we therefore need 3 things. We need the political will, which is present, I think, in the United Kingdom, certainly under this government, and I think is building across the European continent. We need the resources to rearm, which comes with trade-offs, as Boyko was mentioning earlier on. We need the resources to arm, but the rearm plan will help with that. And thirdly, we need a coordination mechanism to ensure that we are rearming in the most effective way possible. All of these things are coming together now, and as a result of that, Europe will be safer, stronger, and better prepared for a fight, if a fight comes in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Madame Mateli.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be there and to share with you. Congratulations for organizing that 5 days conference, and moreover, for organizing a panel on security in a green transition forum. That's really, 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 really good and really nice, and for associating the Jacques Delors Institute to this conference. Well, to answer your question, I would say, as my colleague said too, that things are not changing only today. I think things have changed for a long time ago, but mostly I would quote 2014 when the Russian invaded and annexed Crimea, because at that time, I think it was the time where peace dividend stops. Since the end of the Cold War and for years in Europe, we have seen a decrease in military spending. But I think that was just after 2014 that European countries and NATO members decided that they will increase their military spending and that they will have the objective to, in 10 years, to achieve 2% of GDP in military spending. And that was really important, and that was really disruptive, but in the same time, we need to remember also that the 2016 was an important year because of the Brexit, and the UK citizens decided to leave Europe. It was a sort of shock in Europe about what happened for Europe and what do we need to protect that integration and to stop the hemorrhage. And the second point is probably in 2016 too, the election of Donald Trump, because at that time, he told to the Europeans, it is impossible that we continue to pay for your security, then you have to invest more. And if you remember a little bit, 2022, just the day before the war in Ukraine, in Germany, but a lot of European countries only invest 1.2% of their GDP in military spending. In Europe, I think the average was 1.5%, far from the 2% we were supposed to achieve in 2024. Then I think even if we had the invasion of Crimea and after the Trump election, the first mandate of Trump in the US, we had to wait the war in Ukraine to observe and to see a wake-up call from European countries. Because in 2016, what we have seen is that the moment with the Brexit and the election of Trump opened the door for the Commission to invest in defense industry. And that's really important because it seems to be nothing. And remember, at the first proposal of the Commission for the multi-annual framework was to invest 30 billion euros in the European Defence Fund. At the end, the state decided only to invest 7 billion. That's really important because it shows us how the wake-up call was in various moments. The first one was 2014, the second one for the Commission and the EU institution was 2016, but for the states, really the reality appears clearly at the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022. And with the election of Donald Trump, the second mandate in 2024, I think we realized that we didn't have more time, that we need to invest immediately. And that was I think that was the main objective and the main explanation we can have with the Rearm Europe project, with the white paper. Then in reality, we decided that we have to invest immediately to be ready in 2030. That's not so far, that's 5 years. That is in the next 5 years, and to invest a lot in 6 priorities. Then we have to invest a lot of money, and the question is, how can we do that? And I think what is changing today, and to answer the question, is not the context, is not the agenda, is probably more the emergency, the urgency to invest quickly and to become autonomous in our security and our defense.
Thank you very much. И сега гледната точка на
And now the viewpoint of the industry and Mr. Petr Cholakov. Good afternoon. Unlike everybody else, I'm less of a politician and more of an industrialist, so I'll be looking from a different perspective. In my view, Europe wasn't ready. It didn't think we'll come to that situation where we'll have to reconsider our defense and invest more in our defense. In Bulgaria, unlike the rest of Europe, we continued to develop this sector of our economy, and we have the largest share of the GDP dedicated to military products compared to the rest of the EU. That's 1.4% of the GDP coming from military products, 0.7 for France, 0.6 for Spain. I had the honor of meeting the Danish ambassador to Bulgaria, and I was told that Denmark was one of the few countries that did not support the development of the defense industry, and all the potential was redirected elsewhere. So the question is how in this changed situation Europe can regroup and allocate the necessary R&D and resources in order that it can rekindle its defense industry and invest in the right sectors in order to guarantee its own security and the sovereignty of European countries. As you can see, we are in between two large conflicts, and we don't know what's going to happen. Russia is coming ever closer to us. So what is Bulgaria doing? What is the EU doing to counterbalance that? Because we'll need quite a lot of time to reach the required levels of military production if we compare the EU to countries like the US, Israel, the UK, which is a country making huge steps in that respect. I was at the European Parliament a few days ago, and the discussion was concerned what Europe can do to reinvigorate its military industry and become really self-sustainable. The truth is, Europe cannot be autonomous and self-sufficient. We are dependent on resources. R&D in Europe was also redirected in other sectors, so the focus had shifted. And now having seen what's happening in Ukraine and in the Middle East, we realize that we need to take urgently the necessary steps in order to ensure our defense capabilities. The saying that if you want peace, you have to prepare for war is valid indeed. Svilan Rankiewów, let me just reiterate. He is a panelist here, but his drones, the drones that his company manufactures, are not military drones as such. But you could still tell us what has been changing from an industrial point of view. What is the context in which you're manufacturing your facilities? Indeed, we witness very interesting processes in Europe. If we look at what Europe had been focusing on in the past, it wasn't its own defense. And it's good that this has been changing, and we're taking charge of our own destiny. Together with my brother, we decided to construct a drone which never existed before. What was in existence before, those were military drones, but this is not what we wanted to create. There are Israeli, American, and other drones, but what wasn't on the market is a drone that can facilitate global trade, because trade is how we actually put off and fight off wars. And this is as important as transport connectivity that our colleagues were talking about. And if we increase transport connectivity by just 1%, trade increases by 6%. So we can see the huge multiplying effect. We can trade more easily and we can communicate more easily. And I have the feeling that Europe was very much has been focusing on that in the past. And that was the case in the past few decades. That was our understanding of how the world looked and worked. But now we have to protect our way of life and stop ignoring what we ignored for too long. Our drones cannot be used effectively for military purposes, but they are great when it comes to natural disasters, fighting wildfires, general logistics, moving goods and resources. We have a range of 2,500 kilometers, so we can reach basically any country. So this is what we have been focusing on. However, there are regulations that need to change so that Europe can break the shackles that it created itself. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible for us to create the defense infrastructure, the defense system that we really need. I'm not a politician, but what we do is business, and we have been doing business for a long time in a very difficult context. But what guides us are the laws of physics and human laws as well. Europe cannot change the laws of physics, but we can change human laws. And this is what can help us quickly construct the defense mechanisms that we need. Thank you.
Благодаря ви.
Thank you. Now we are going to go into an argument mode, maybe? I'm not sure. If you don't want to argue between yourselves, then I will argue with you. So I'm asking you immediately, how everything that's been just said is going to be understood and accepted by the European populace? Are they ready to lose some privileges in order to boost the security of the Union? Because we promised them riches. Well, we have to explain to people. And if we explain it to them in an understandable way, if we frighten them, for instance, no, populists frighten people. They play on the fears. We are Democrats. We believe that if a person gets enough information, which is also your role, they can make responsible decisions by themselves, but they need to know more. And here's where politicians should be a moral compass. They should educate people, saying where we are, what should be done. And it could be a positive, because Bulgaria is strong in several directions, trends, satellites, drones, and our biggest strength that we tend to underestimate we thought that the old Russian armaments that we had, right now we are very good to produce consumables for all weapon systems, Eastern, Western. That's why Rheinmetall came to Bulgaria, 420 million investments for gunpowder production facility built in Bulgaria. But there are several principles that people should know, because we need consensus. First of all, we aren't going to substitute the US. The US should stay in NATO. Bulgaria should have a balanced transatlantic policy in order to succeed. But since the US has other priorities, the president says that they are lacking funds. They have an enormous foreign debt. The American government pays 5% on its foreign debt, so they've got enormous problems. And we should understand it and work together with them. Now, I met Obama 11 times. Every time that I mentioned Europe, Obama said, "I'm sick and tired of different countries in Europe telling me different things. Germans say one thing, France says another." And the time has come. So those principles are: we have the SAVE instrument. The Commission did it quite quickly, but the private sector is a must. If you think that Brussels will give governments money for public procurement, no, that's not enough. We are going to mess up. Everything that we do in terms of defense and security, we must work with the private sector. You remember Elon Musk tried saving Ukrainians at the beginning, and then he didn't. He betrayed them. So guns, drones, surveillance in Ukraine, they're all based on Microsoft software. So we have to develop weapon systems. Maybe in the past we weren't wise enough, because you build ships, but those ships, as the Russians understood, were sunk in minutes through drones. So planes, even Russian planes, don't want to enter the Ukrainian airspace because Ukrainians take them down. So they just fire their rockets from the territory of Russia. And our planes should be able to fire wisely, smartly. So everything that we're going to do from now on, we must do it together on the eastern flank, because we are on the eastern flank of NATO. We've got partners, we've got good neighbors, Romania, Greece, Turkey, Poland. We have to work together, and that's what the EC tells us. This is not just taking money and spending it, no, only together with others.
Knows what is war, Mr. Pizzula, right? And as I remember, because I followed this, the Croatian army needed 3 years to rearm properly and to conduct 2 very successful military operations. How long will Europe need to replace America, or to take some of its responsibilities on its own?
It's a good question. Luckily, I'm not Croatian Minister of Defense to reveal military secrets before you here, but you're quite right. We must not be taken by the wrong foot anymore. But I'm not over pessimistic when we talk about our capacity to adjust in a way. I think that we got collective wisdom and all capabilities needed to adjust our position in the contemporarily very turbulent war. And we are the only global player with chaos on our outer borders right now, and really it makes us vulnerable. And I'm even not frightened by the actions by the populists, as you said in your question. And I want to say, I'm not fond of the populist, but I admire one definition of the populism and populist, which says that populists are people asking right questions, but providing wrong answers. But it's up to us to talk with people and to fight for the minds and hearts of our European citizens. Just remind what Mr. Letta said this morning and yesterday during the dinner. He said something very important. He said before he put ideas on the paper or laptop, I don't know, he chose to travel all over the Europe, but not visiting politicians in the institutions only, or in the capitals. He moved all around the Europe, asking people in the provinces, in the small towns, what they think about current situation and what they expect from European Union in the next generations. And it helped him to comprise, I would say, a very remarkable piece of paper, and now it's us to try to implement it. I can see some changes right now. Don't forget that Vladimir Putin, he's a dictator and invader. We can analyze it, but I think it's not worth it to do it right now. He produced something he didn't expect, or even we didn't expect after the invasion of the Ukraine. It's been almost overnight when two northern countries, Sweden and Finland, abolished 2-century-long politics of neutrality and joined the NATO. It was a remarkable achievement. And I would say, of course, Bulgaria and Croatia, we are particularly interested in to see enlargement of the European Union in the years to come, that it's the first global crisis, invasion of Ukraine, who sent the wind into the sail of enlargement politics. Any before global crisis prevented European Union to think about enlargement, starting financial crisis in US 2007, 2008, Brexit, migration crisis, and pandemia. But Mr. Putin did a miracle. He gave a push to expansion of the NATO and new impetus for the further enlargement policy. But it's not enough. And I can tell you we can see some changes right now in makeup of in the institutions of the European Union. Don't forget that for the first time ever, European Union has now Commissioner for Defense and the Space, Mr. Andrius Kubilius. And for the first time in the European Parliament, then Subcommittee for Security and Defense, now is full-fledged Committee for Defense and Security. And just to conclude this part of our conversation, I remember 70 years ago it's been a miracle that European Economic Community started as a gathering with clear aim to put a control over the coal and steel. Very important ingredient to wage the war in the 50s, in a way. It was so successful that we are now talking about absolutely enhanced and very well developed cooperation between 27 countries. My question is now, what now we need to put under the control in 2025? Some would say hydrogen, silicium, because we are talking about IT revolution, quantum computing. And I said we need to add to that intentions to put under the control two things.
Lithium?
No. Pessimism and cynicism. If we do that, we can ripe some results.
Well, pessimism can be also very healthy.
Absolutely.
Pessimism could be very healthy, especially when we put it on the right place. And I'm asking Ambassador Copsey, UK has left the European Union, but are you aiming to be the major partner of EU in defense on the place of the Americans right now?
I think European rearmament and defence is a joint project between all NATO allies, including the United States. And I think we shouldn't get too carried away with ourselves. I think there are just as many American forces in Europe today as there were when Donald Trump became president. And I think if we listen attentively to what not only Donald Trump, but also the previous few American presidents, including Democratic presidents, have said about European defence, is that America considers it not unreasonable that Europe should pay more towards the cost of its own defence, substantially more. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think it's for us to look to our own defence, and I don't expect the Americans to withdraw from Europe in the near future, but I think it's extremely important that we do exactly that, and that we work together to chart a path to ensuring that we are capable of defending ourselves as is only reasonable. The next important event in that journey will be the NATO summit taking place just next month, which will set, I think, new, very ambitious targets on the level of defence expenditure that we would like all NATO allies to reach. That's going to be very difficult, certainly for my country as well, but we will have to find a way through. But Boyko asked me about the role of the United Kingdom, and just to be very clear on that, European security and the security of the United Kingdom are indivisible. They've always been indivisible, and they will remain indivisible in the future. That's why the UK, together with our other friends and allies across the European continent, the Baltic states, the Poles, the French, the Germans, Bulgaria, of course, has been so clear in our support for Ukraine militarily, including right up to the point at which the Russians so outrageously launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. So we'll carry on doing that, and we'll carry on working hand in glove with our European partners, but we'll also carry on making the case for the inclusion of the United States, because the United States is ultimately the most important power in NATO. NATO would not be as an effective an alliance without the United States. So what we need is a rebalancing of our security and defence expenditure towards Europe, and that means that everyone, and I do mean everyone, will need to ensure that they are able to make an appropriate contribution towards the cost of their own defence, which after all is the first responsibility of every state, and this is after all one of the richest regions in the world. So it seems perfectly reasonable that we do more, and the United Kingdom will be there to drive that process forward, hand in hand with our European friends, and hand in hand with our American and Canadian friends.
Madame Matteli, do you wonder what Jacques Delors, who gave the name of your institute, would say by knowing that Europe is rearming right now? Europe, which was created as a peaceful project.
That's a good question, and thank you very much for asking me. May I answer in 2 words and really quickly about the willingness of European people to invest in defense? I just want to remember that in 2014, we were all together investing only 24 billion euros in our military equipment. Currently, this is 4 times more. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, we rose our military spending for 30%. That's enormous. And Eurobarometers after Eurobarometers, you can see that European citizens support more and more and vote more and more for not only European defense, but European army. That's really important to remember that, because since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, we feared the moment where European citizens won't support anymore Ukraine. And it is not yet the moment. And I think that people, in reality, are perfectly aware that we need to invest more in defense. But in the same time, they are perfectly aware about the risk and the consequences to investing too much. and without cooperation in defense. And that's why we can see some doubt about that fact. Concerning Jacques Delors, that's clear that he was the president of the European Commission during 10 years, and he was supporting economic integration. But at the same time, at the beginning of the 90s, he was one of the first leaders in Europe to say we have a geopolitical responsibility to welcome that Eastern countries in Europe. That's for our security, that's our future, and we have to. Then I think, I'm not Jacques Delors, but I think if he was here, he would say, he would have explained that investing in European defense is a geopolitical issue and an imperative. He would have repeated and repeated that we have to invest together, because if not, it could be a risk. And because staying fragmented would cost a lot and would be a waste of money, limiting our possibility to be ready in front of the threat, in front of a war. He would have said that after the creation of the European integration, after the single market, that moment was the third European moment. Investing in defense represents an opportunity for us to invest more in our integration. And that's really important to remember that. And he would have alerted also, but Enrico Letta did that and does that much better than me, that security is not only defense, and that we have to think the security more globally.
Съгласен, I agree fully. Господин Чолаков, вие в началото посочихте опита на българската.
You spoke at the beginning about the experience of the Bulgarian military industry, the fact that it had not allowed itself to lag behind. We have our area in the country known as the Guns and Roses area, where most of the military equipment is being manufactured. But is there a lesson for Europe in all that? Because Europe has been complaining a lot as it deindustrialized in favor of countries like China. So is there a chance for the defense industry to spur the process of reindustrialization in Europe? And what are the dangers in that? Well, thank you for this question. I believe that's the idea. And a rearmament should create a potential for Europe to reinvigorate its industry in general. This was underestimated in the past. Well, what was underestimated was the Soviet component. I think that was the idea. But I can assure you that over the years, the defense industry has not been relying mostly on Soviet armament. A lot has been invested in new types of weapons, in the manufacturing of drones and other military equipment. And I believe now is the right time for Europe to start investing anew in its defense. But I should probably ask a delicate question, which is probably rhetorical, but it's a question for politicians. So please ask away, ask directly. I'm just wondering how politicians who over the years focus their attention on other topics, how are they going to explain and justify now to society at large the fact that Bulgaria will have to take out a loan and invest that money to increase the military capabilities of the country? How is that message going to be delivered, and how is it going to be received? Because it's not just a question of Europe becoming independent and autonomous in terms of its military capabilities, but it's also a question of increasing the potential, the industrial potential of Europe. In the past, it was the military industry in the United States that spurred innovations which then became commonplace in our daily lives. So we should take the defense industry back to that situation where it would be central in terms of our industry, and it will be ready to face the challenges that lie ahead of us. I would give a chance to politicians to respond, but I would probably rephrase what you just said by saying, yes, there are some among politicians who give easy answers to some questions, and those are former politicians. That is correct, indeed. Boyko, let me just add, the most difficult thing is to be the current president. It's great to be a former president. Yes, that's why I'm saying that it will be easy for you to answer the question. But let me go back to the question of industry. So why is it, Mr. Rangel, that one of the poorest countries in Europe created enterprises in the space industry? And I'm not just talking about your own, but those some of the most ambitious enterprises indeed. So how did it happen? Well, Bulgaria has great human capital, and this has always been the case if you look at how quickly Bulgaria industrialized after its liberation and how quickly it caught up with the rest of Europe. So this has happened before, and perhaps few people know about it, but we have the flight over Edirne, 1912. So we have our achievements. The first female military pilot, the first military airport, the first head of state who flew in a plane. So the first person to survive a space flight and be able to tell what happened. So we had a lot of factories that manufactured planes, and we had our own models. So if we go back to the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, and it was soon after the Wright brothers. So it's something really amazing. So Bulgaria has always had this indefatigable spirit to innovate and to be a pioneer. So we have proved that things can happen the right way in Bulgaria, and if they can happen here, they can happen anywhere, and that's quite encouraging, I think. Honestly speaking, a lot of people are concerned about AI-generated unemployment, and they're worried what's going to happen and how AI is going to eliminate a lot of jobs. But Europe and the rest of the world needs such resurgences in certain industries in order to reinvigorate. And when it comes to challenges, the most difficult challenge was getting into space. And that would also require huge investment and a lot of work by a lot of people. But it's peaceful and very productive. But now we live in a world that is rather dangerous. And if we are to draw analogies, we have to say that, well, we do what we have to do. We work in our neighborhood, but our neighborhood is getting riskier by the day. So we have to start thinking, and perhaps we'll have to invest in security systems and fences. And we shouldn't be feeling bad about it, as we already said it. When military personnel go through airports, people applaud them. Europe was the leader in the military area in the past. We turned our backs on that, but we shouldn't go to the opposite extreme, and we shouldn't be afraid. We have the right to protect our way of life. Have you got your own indelicate question to politicians? Well, the question is just why and when will Europe be able to start manufacturing stuff? There is a precedent. We saw that during the Second World War. Hundreds of planes being constructed in just a day. Now we are talking about overregulation and too much red tape in all areas, and there are good reasons for that, and it's well-intentioned, but sometimes that can be a barrier, and certain the conditions on the ground perhaps have changed, so we have to change the rules to reflect that change. So Europe cannot afford to remain where it is. We cannot continue to insist on business as usual. We have to change the way we look at labour. We need to heighten our productivity. So delicacy itself is a European value, and we are saying that probably that's something that needs to be reconsidered and re-evaluated. But war is not just about drones and military industry. We would like to believe that Bulgarian industry will be able to cope, but war is also a place where, speaking from personal experience, people die. So is Europe actually ready for sacrifices? Haven't we forgotten suffering and death? And the demographic consequences of all that. We have perhaps forgotten that in the past when our grandparents and grandparents left home to fight, they were leaving behind 10 or even a dozen children. Well, I come from the real economy. I know that for a problem to get its solution, it has to be put squarely on the table. So we'll have to take out loans. We heard that. But I would like to thank Prime Minister Stanishev, going back to 1997, and Prime Minister Kostov. Since then, Bulgarians have forgotten that the GDP of Bulgaria has been increasing due to foreign investment, at the same time as reducing its debt. And I can look young Bulgarians in the face because our generation was the first that hasn't been robbed by the socialist system or by the banks back in 1997. But those people that I just mentioned allow us to look young people in the face and say, well, our country is not bankrupt, we have the money in the banks. The question is what we do with that money. Once we're part of the Eurozone, we can set up a sovereign fund, or we can have export insurance, we can help military enterprises. There'll be lots and lots of opportunities. We'll have the trust of the markets. We can finance our own nuclear power stations. We can set up a data center in Bulgaria. Bear in mind that everybody wants that now. And there are countries that are very well positioned in that respect. And this is a case for Bulgaria. And everybody is asking about PPAs. And if we can offer 10-year contracts to large data suppliers, AI will come here quickly. If we have data centers, this is what's going to protect us. Will be protected because European data, European cloud services, European defense will depend on us. It will be based in Bulgaria. And we are among the few countries in this favorable position. Investors will not go to Erdogan or to Fitu or to Orban. So it is just a question of taking advantage of this situation. So we are looking at a huge opportunity, and the opportunities that I'm talking about, they are results of responsible politics, and it's important to shy away from populism, which is not going to take us anywhere. This is the bottom, the ultimate bottom in politics. So I'm very grateful to the organizers that they have chosen topics that require us to be wise and speak what really matters.
Grave problem, the biggest problem into the rearmament of Europe. As shortly as possible to formulate it, Mr. Pizzula, from yours.
I'll take that challenge and be very short. Golden age of European soft power is almost gone. It's for sure. Our way of living must be adapted under new circumstances. Our immediate neighborhood is very hostile and very turbulent. And what we need to do beside rearmament, SAFU, and other processes we need to do. I think we need to be very decisive, but we must not, instead of being soft power, to become hard power. What I'm arguing for, that we need well-trained and well-equipped soldiers. But I think that that transition must be led by our educational system and our university. It must be driven force of our future adjustment to the hostile environment we found ourselves in. This week we will celebrate in Parliament in Strasbourg 4th anniversary of the Schengen area. It's a great achievement and we are very proud of it. But I would like to see European Union 10 years from now, 2035, in the same mood or even better, thanking for efficient European defense union, but without paying a cost to our democracies and our way of life.
Very ambitious. Thank you very much for this sincere answer. I have always thought that Putin's soft power was his hard power. Now we have to take this challenge. The biggest problem, Mr. Kopsi, according to you?
The greatest challenge that we will all face is preparing the public. And it's preparing the public for what's going to be a very significant change to the way that we lead our lives. Preparing the public to accept and understand the fact that if we're going to be paying colossal sums for rearmament, we will have less money for other popular public services. Preparing the public to understand that the government of every European country, although some are in a worse position than others, do not have unlimited means and unlimited resources. To understand the level of comfort to which we've all become accustomed, some of us for a longer period than others, over many decades, may look quite different in the future. Preparing the public to understand that the next crisis is not going to look like the COVID pandemic, which for many Europeans involved sitting at home and watching television whilst not going to work and getting paid for it, but actually real sacrifice, including the ultimate sacrifice. I think that's going to take a while. I think some countries are really aware of the level of danger, and I can see my Finnish colleague here. I think Finland is probably right up there with the countries that's the best prepared. The Poles aren't far behind as well. And it's going to be an all-of-society effort, industry, civilians, the armed forces. And I think that, you know, in our comfortable consumerism-oriented societies, that is going to take quite a bit of understanding. But just to end on a positive note, when I was talking to my visiting colleagues, the NATO generals, about the recruitment into the British Armed Forces, what they said was that actually there is no challenge when it comes to recruiting the next generation of soldiers, airmen, airwomen, and sailors. There are many people who want to do it. The challenge is just about modernizing our armed forces to take into account the way that life has changed. But people still understand the need for security, the most important thing, and people want to do their bit. It's up to the government of every European country to explain to their citizens very clearly what that will mean and to set it out in very clear terms that people can understand, and to understand that we don't have a choice other than to prepare.
Very short answer on the problematic question, because I will have one final question, but now on the problems. The problem, Madame Mateli, where do you see it?
Well, the paradox of the current situation is that we have to be ready, even mentally, to reduce the risk of war. Indeed, we invest more than Russian, and then if we coordinate our effort, our investment, if we prepare people to be ready to war, I think it will be enough dissuasive. But that's a paradox in reality. And at the same time, I would like to ask you a question. Do you think that young Russians, young Ukrainians were ready to die for their country and to die for war? In front of the situation, I think that's, you have to, and you will change your mind really, really quickly. If a young people think he will have to die for his country, it means that he has no future. Then that may be a good news to see that young people are not really ready.
I will answer, if you ask me, I will answer no. And that's why you will see where Putin is recruiting his people from.
Yeah, clearly.
He's barely touching Moscow and St. Petersburg,
Yeah.
where the most liberal and the most, how should I say, part of the society is. So people who don't want to die because they don't know death. Проблема, според вас, господин Чолаков?
Според мен проблема или по-скоро решението.
The solution, rather than the problem, is to get rid of the red tape. I'll give you an example. This is not only valid for Bulgaria. One of the big French companies wants to produce submarines, but to get the necessary documents right now, when the defense industry is a priority, they need 5 years to get the documents so that they enlarge their production capabilities. In 5 years, Europe will be totally different, you can imagine. In terms of security, the bureaucracy takes too long. So we have to rethink the whole process. Mr. Angelov, you actually said the same thing, but you can repeat it. So the problem is red tape. As my colleague said, I agree. I'll quote one real estate developer from the Arab Emirates, how the mayor of Berlin invited him. They looked at a Tempelhof airport, which is not used right now, and they can build houses to combat the housing issue. So when he asked what time you will need, 10 years, because we have to preserve the lizards living on the territory. So the lizards will be okay, but the people will not. So again, you can see it with the naked eye in all industries. The dynamics are different, so we need a new approach. Okay, with one word to wrap up things optimistically. Mr. Plevneliev, you had it really difficult today, but armaments and optimism, only you can do that. So this will be a challenge for all of you. We went through the problems, the existential issues. Let's finish at a higher note. Okay, one sentence. There is always a solution. And those solutions have to pass through competence, strength, so that you get peace through strength. Mr. Pisula?
Best new EU defense capabilities on the ground.
Mr. Kopsi?
We need to prepare.
Madame Matteli?
Yeah, the EU integration has shown us many times that we are stronger together than let's go together.
Господин Чулаков?
Европа като люка на...
Europe, as the cradle of humanity, should go back to its original purpose. Skeptics don't get monuments. That's a wonderful finish to the discussion. I'll use it in the future, if you allow me. I'd like to thank the organizers for the wonderful forum, the wonderful panel.